Today, we're thrilled to welcome a very special guest to the show, Cory Brookins, owner of Five Star Inspections. Since its founding in 2006, Five Star Inspections has been the leading home inspection company in Northwest Florida, earning a stellar reputation for excellence over the past decade and beyond. Cory brings a wealth of experience to the table, performing both residential and commercial inspections. His services include infrared thermal imaging surveys, radon abatement, windstorm mitigation, and 4-point property inspections, which are all designed to help buyers minimize risk by uncovering potential safety or structural issues before they become costly surprises. Cory is a certified master inspector, a Bay County Board of Realtors member, and a proud member of both the Indoor Air Quality Association and the National Association of Home Inspectors. Before launching his career in inspections, Cory earned his bachelor's degree from Florida State University, go Noles, where he was also a member of the FSU football team, so he definitely knows the value of teamwork, discipline, and paying attention to the details. We are excited to have him here today to share his thoughts and expertise. Welcome, Cory.
That was so nice. It's fantastic.
Wait, so you played football for Florida State?
I did, yeah.
What
2003
position?
to 2006. I was a center and offensive lineman.
Okay, so
little
Heather
bigger.
loves hearing that. She loves the Knolls. Just kidding. She's a Gator.
Gators.
So you played for Bobby Bowden.
I did, yeah. Played for Coach Bowden during that time period. I grew up a big Florida State fan, kind of always what I wanted to do, and was just blessed to have that opportunity. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think you can learn so much from just participating in sports, but this is a whole nother level. This is Division I football.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was it's kind of interesting now that we're so far away from it, like seeing how many guys went on to be in the NFL. And my best friend and roommate from the time, he's got a Super Bowl ring with Tom Brady and all those things. So it's neat. It's fun now that we're older to joke about how good we were.
How was it playing for Bobby Bowden? I mean, he's such a legend, obviously.
Yeah, I think what's cool about Coach Bowden was that he was exactly like what you think he is what he was. Like there was not two personas, you know what I mean? The exact same man that you saw on TV and what he stood for and how he acted and treated us, it was the same thing. He was fantastic. And he was also incredibly smart. I mean, the things he could go during a warm-up and watch the other team's long snapper and think that he didn't warm up very well. And next thing you know, we're going to block a punt because he saw a kid not warm up 30 minutes before the game.
Wow.
That's smart.
I remember watching as a child, like him and Mickey Andrews, the defensive coordinator. And I remember crying when we would lose. Like if we played the Gators or Miami, the wide left, wide right, field goal days. I remember being so invested. Like I would literally be so pissed off and sad if we lost.
Well, I was the same way. I was going through, I was at the first wide right. I was at the choke and doke. I mean, all of those things. And I was the same way as a kid. What's really funny, Winston, who works for me, he's a big Florida State fan. And one time he was telling me a story too about how upset he was at a game and he's as a little kid throwing stuff around. And I asked him what game it was. And it was one that I played in. Like I felt bad.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I forget I'm that much older than you.
And so before Florida State, you graduated Florida State in 06.
06, yeah.
You opened up, that's when you got into the home inspection.
Yeah, so right away, like I really only ever had one job. So my mother is a realtor, and I would see the reports. I always just thought it was cool. It's like CSI for houses, trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And at the time that I was getting out, obviously the market was still great. I was like, well, everybody's making money in real estate. And then of course, like right when I started the business, everything goes downhill. But it was honestly, it was a blessing in disguise at the time because like now, there's a lot of business and there's, you can advertise and get a lot of business quickly. Where back then, it was so small. Like I literally, in March in 2008, we did 4 inspections that month, right?
Wow.
If as a team we don't do a half day an hour, we don't do 4 inspections in a day. And so, but it allowed you to learn slowly and figure things out. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad it happened that way.
Absolutely. Are you from Panama City?
Yeah, from Lynn Haven, grew up in North Shore and lived there my whole life. And then we live right across the canal in Panama City in Candlewick now.
Okay. And did you go to Mosley?
I did, went to Mosley.
We both went to Mosley,
Yeah.
Which was funny because we didn't know that.
Yep.
We graduated the same year and didn't even know each other.
We didn't know each other at all. Oh,
Go
six.
Fins.
Y'all were
06?
06?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
when
we
you
would have
graduated
been,
college.
yeah,
Yeah.
but so I'd have been, a senior when y'all were not there, 8th grade.
Right. Incredible. So I just think as a business owner, being from here and knowing the area and knowing people, and if you do a good job, you get referrals.
For sure.
Awesome.
I think it also helps too, like in my business, like from county to county and town to town, like there's different builders that do things different ways. And like I've had friends that live in like Tampa and they're like, hey, I'm buying a house, come stay with me this weekend, we'll hang out and do an inspection. I'm like, you don't want me to. Like things are different there. There's different so knowing the area, you really can't undervalue what it's worth.
What certifications do you have to be a home inspector?
What's interesting is when I first got started, like there was none. Like it was the Wild West in far what you wanted to do. And I was in I think 2012, 2013 is when the licensing happened through the state, the DBPR, just like you guys. And I was great. I was like, this is gonna, give us licenses and gives us this kind of power in what you do. What I didn't realize that someone brought up at the time was like, well, now you have the same qualification as the guy that got his license yesterday. You know what I mean? Y'all are on equal footing. And there's obviously a difference in experience and that kind of thing. But so we have the state license and then the NASHI, the different associations and that kind of thing. It's a lot of little associations probably.
So from working with you, I've noticed you use a lot of technology. One we were talking about is the robot technology. Can you explain all of the tools and technology that you use and how it helps you in inspecting homes? Yeah,
absolutely. So when I first got started, you literally had a clipboard and a sheet of paper. You walked around checking things off and writing it down. And now it's obviously all done digitally. And we have multiple computers on site and doing that. But the actual tools themselves, like, we had an engineer build us a robot, and it's cool. You put the goggles on and you drive it. It's really neat, and it's great for underneath homes in particular, where the clearance isn't quite as big. I do try to tell people though, like there's no substitution for seeing it yourself, the sounds and the smell and the sights of being underneath there. So I only deploy it when there's literally no other option. Because it's kind of like with drones. Like drones are great, and so if you have a 4-story house on 30A that's got a steep pitch and a metal roof, you can't get on that roof. So we'll fly the drone. But what you don't want it to be is an easy tool for you not to get on a roof. We had one a couple months ago in Santa Rosa actually where there had been an evaluation with a drone, and the buyer was like, I just kind of want a second look. So we got on it. And we had numerous like nail pops, things like that you would never see with a drone that you can't do. But, so not that it's bad, it's just different. But then we also have things like you mentioned with thermal imaging. Like thermal imaging is unreal. I mean, the first thermal imaging camera we ever got, it was thousands of dollars. It was very expensive. And now I think you can get them for like $600. But what it can help you find is great because like as water evaporates, it cools. And so if you scan the walls and the ceilings, like it's so much easier to find an active leak. Now it can also give you too much information sometimes. I remember one time I was sure there was a leak in this room and I couldn't locate it. And I spent an hour just in this one room. Then for them to tell me that sometimes the dog uses the restroom in that room. So I detected it and found it and I was like, oh no, I've been done this.
Wow. Do you, like with the thermal imaging in particular, is that something like, okay, visually you see or you smell mold or something, and so you're like, okay, let's get some additional help, trying to locate it or whatever? Or is that something that you bring to every home inspection?
Yeah, so we definitely bring to every inspection, but it's kind of both.
Right.
When you're trying to hone in on there being an issue, like one thing that I'm kind of lucky to have is I get really allergic to the decay of wood. Like it bothers my sight. So I'll walk into a house and sometimes I'll turn to Steve who works with me and I go like, there's mold in here and we got to find it. And to the point where like there was one time I remember us leaving a house and me being really mad. Like I couldn't find it. I know it's in there. And then I went back inside and I pulled a picture frame off and we pulled the nail from the frame and you could see the rust where there was water in the wall. And that was before we had thermal imaging. Now I could just go in and scan it and see the blue in the wall.
And I think, obviously we had Hurricane Michael in 2018 and you had a lot of construction work, obviously, for the repairs. And a lot of this stuff you can't see. There is mold. I feel like there's mold in pretty much every house, even new construction.
Yeah, for sure. When you do the test, so you test outside versus inside, and the different thing, because different locations have different kinds of growth in the air and in the walls, and just what you're used to on the exterior. And Hurricane Michael did educate us, on it was such a wild time, and that like I went for a couple of days thinking like, oh, I don't have a job anymore, to being busier than we've ever been because we just changed the way everything everything worked, and that like now we're not checking doorknobs right now. Like we're gonna go in, we're gonna get a cut rate, and we're gonna see how much we can do to help people find big issues in their house they're unaware of. And so we would do 6 appointments a day. I was living in a camper at the house and with a generator in the back. And I think we looked at it later, and I think over the next year it was over 2,000 houses we looked at after that.
Wow. How many home inspections are you doing on an annual basis on average?
And so typically on the real estate, so we do the real estate, and then we have the insurance, then we'll do consultations, and like we have an estate sale right now that we're working on for a seller over in the east part of Florida. And so I have Winston who works for me, and then Steve who works for me, and then my wife Erin works for me as well. And they've all been 5 to 15 years now with me. And so as a team, I think we average somewhere around 4,000, 4 to 4,500 a year as far as appointments. Now, like some of those are just quick insurance checkoffs, that kind of thing, but right in there.
But when you have that kind of number, all I can think of is experience, because nothing can replace being in that many homes and seeing what you see, you know. Yeah. I think when I first started in real estate, just getting my feet on the ground, I was like, okay, I just need to do this more to get the hang of it. But now, I mean, 4,500, that's
an amazing number.
I think like anything too, like you obviously get better as you go along. And that's what like, you think about what I was like in 2007, I'm like, oh, I don't even want to know, because I keep all my files. So like, I'm terrible at remembering faces and names. Like I can drive by a house and remember something I found 15 years ago in it, you know? And so I'll go back and look at those reports sometimes. We'll have houses we've done 3 or 4 times over, you know, the last 20 years, and go like, what were you doing, buddy? Like you just, you know, how things were written and documented. So you just, you know, continue to grow and everything.
And I just feel like too, like the liability. Do you carry any sort of liability
insurance?
Yeah,
and so the state requires us to have the general liability at $1 million, and it's one of those things too where you go like, you know, there's a debate, you know, like, do you have errors and omissions? Well, that makes you a target. So your lawyers tells you not to have that. And so here's what I found is this: we percentage-wise are like 99%. I know it. Like, so to me, if I went to a restaurant and 99%, I'm good. There comes a time where you have to write a check. Every year it happens where I have to write a check for something that we didn't do. Like I don't know if that's great to be putting out on the airways, but it is. It's part of owning any business. You know, you're going to make a mistake. I think the things that are tougher is when, you know, you didn't make a mistake and you were clear with them that like, look, we cannot look inside this wall. I can't tear that wall out, you know? Right. And then they come back 14 months later and they go, well, there was mold in that wall. Well, first of all, it's 14 months. And second of all, like, we told you at the time. And they're just like, well, we're going to do this, and and it's like, and then your lawyer tells you, well, like, you're better just to cut that check to not have to deal with them.
Right, because, I mean, there might be, say you write up on the inspection report under the summary, or it's in the report, it's going to be in both, but there's a leak in the bathroom. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's mold in the walls. You're not taking down walls, but you are letting them know there's a leak. But sometimes there's no signs, and so that's what I'm thinking is like, good thing you have the liability insurance.
Yeah, so that, and I think too, a lot of it is just like a lot of the reporting. You know, so what's interesting is I use a reporting service that is like, it's older, but it's because I love it. And I feel like people enjoy the fact that I'm not going to put 20 pages that tell you to sweep your driveway and clean your gutters because I don't want you to lose the forest for the trees. And so like, it's very important to you have to know what information they need and what information that they can have, but they don't need right now. And I think that's the biggest thing.
I like your reports. They're simple for buyers to review, and for me to review with them after the fact. It just makes it really easy. I like the way you put it together.
Yeah, I mean, there's sometimes I'll get a report, it's 100 pages, and there's nothing significant in there. Like, but it'll scare buyers, right? Because they're like, 100 pages. And I'm like, there's nothing major in here.
I had one yesterday where the home inspector predicted that that property wouldn't meet FHA or VA standards. And I said, how do you know?
Yeah, that is the thing too that's tough, is like, you have to know when to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's not your job. Like, that's not your job to put what kind of, like, here's the question I get all the time. Would you buy it? Would you let your mom live in it? What are the bones like? Do you think it's worth this? And I go, I can't tell you that. First of all, you need to ask your realtor the majority of those questions, because if they can't answer it, they'll get you the right person. But I can tell you what's wrong with it. Like, that's what I can tell you, right? And so is it a big, like, we did one last Friday, and there was a foundation issue that was actually fairly significant where it was located at. And the buyer was very concerned that the tub faucet wasn't secured in the wall. And it's like, I have to nicely find a way to tell you, like, don't worry about that. You know what I mean? Like, that's every house. Like, this is an issue we need to, explore more. But the other thing, too, is it's a math equation. Like, at the end of the day, here's your summary page, here's your electrical issues and the problems that you have. Like, let's get a quote for an electrician, and you decide if that number matches what you were going to do.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's your job is you have the client. A lot of times it's the buyer, right? Yeah. And you're just providing information. Hey, this is the information that you need to know on the house. It's your decision, and discuss it with your realtor what you guys want to do with it. Yeah. It's not your decision whether they should buy the house or not.
Right. And never, like, I would never tell anyone, like, don't buy this house. I would never, like, that's not my job in any way.
Yeah, your job is just to disclose what you found.
Exactly.
And it's completely unbiased, because I get this a lot where they're like, oh, well, he's your guy. Yeah, he's really good at what he does, so I recommend you, But, I mean, you've done home inspections for us on flips that we did on Oak Knoll, and it cost a lot of money.
But we appreciate it.
Oh, Cory got us again. Found something that we were unaware of. You remember it was like insulation or something?
I know. But down the road, that saved us from more issues when we sold it with a new buyer.
Right.
We were able to tackle that. And I think you re-inspected it after that. That's so funny. I called you on one yesterday, and you're like, give me just a second. Let me see if I've ever inspected that house. And I was like, what? Because you do so many, and for so long you've been doing this. So that's really
it's
cool.
It's funny you say about, like, doing them for realtors. Like, so there's, I mean,
you don't take it easy on us.
Right. But here's what's funny is this. I will have realtors that will use me when they buy a house and not use me with their clients. And I always wonder, like, is that a compliment or not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because really, like, as a business owner, like, you're constantly trying to diagnose, like, am I doing a good job? Am I giving you the best information? Am I communicating correctly? So do they want me to do it for them because they think that I find stuff, but do they not want it for the other people because am I not communicating it well? Like I have to make sure, like, either them or me are wrong, but I need to make sure that I'm handling it correctly in that scenario.
I think you're very proficient at what you do, and especially with me coming from law enforcement and not having as much knowledge about, like, the operating systems of a house. Like, I had my dad, like, he was like very handy growing up. Like, he was the one changing my tire until I learned how to do it. But I think you have a unique way of how you can explain it in a simplistic way. It's kind of like the newspaper, like, they put it out, like, what is it, 5th grade reading level, but that's how so it's like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying now. It's not, like, overly complicated, and I like that.
I do too. Whenever I'm having a buyer order their home inspection, I give them a list of 3. You're always my number 1, but I try to have them pick it just so that I'm not liable if anything happens and they say, well, you forced me to pick this home inspector, because that's not
Put it
goal.
in an email.
I want them to pick them.
Top 3.
Yeah, it's always 3. Cory's always my number 1. So,
and a lot of people use you. Like, I remember I had a listing and you found mold all in that house. It was all on the walls and all on the floors. And I'm like, I'm glad he found it, because I had no idea. But we appreciate you. Yeah. So are there areas of the home that typically aren't covered in a standard home inspection? Like, I know we talked about crawl spaces, attics, certain systems. Would something like that come with an additional charge?
Yeah, and so there are some things, like if you have an above ground pool, we're not doing your above ground pool, right? It's just not, because there's just too many things, variables, and there's also, I think the other tough thing is this, there's things that are just a gray area that is better not to delve in. So, like, let's say your sprinkler system, okay? Well, your sprinkler system is 99% underground, okay? What if the day that I'm doing the inspection, it's blowing, the wind is blowing, so it's not fully covering. Like, how am I, so I can't see the vast majority of it, and I can't tell you the coverage rate, And so what we try to do with this is, like, I will make sure your sprinkler system responds to commands. So you have a control, we'll test the pump, we'll make sure you have your backflow preventer, that kind of thing. But the ability to irrigate your yard is not something that I can jump into. It's kind of the same like with your washing machine and dryer. Like, I can't bring a load of clothes to the house. Right. And those units are designed to be operated under, especially what's funny is as they get smarter, they won't work unless you have clothes in them. You know what I mean? That they're measuring all that. And so, there are some limitations, but like almost all your appliances besides washer and dryer are covered. When you're in your attic and crawl space, like you have to let them know the things you can't see and can see, and are restricted there. The tough one is when it comes to like clutter in a house, like, because there's a way to word it where I'm not trying to like, if the report gets back to the seller, I don't want like this house is just full of stuff, but I can't move the grandfather clock to get to the window. I can't.
Yeah.
And you also do re-inspections,
Right.
which I appreciate, and those are for additional charge, but it's basically, if you want to explain that process.
Yeah, so like if you find issues that are wrong and they fix them or address them, like we always recommend a licensed contractor do it. You know what I mean? And that's what's like great with Thomas. Thomas is we always tell people as a roofer, like there's not that many people that will do what he does with repairs, and so you can recommend him and feel great about him because he's got a license. Like we dealt with one this week actually where they're like, yeah, like we're trying to close, we need the 4-point inspection. Well, part of the 4-point is that the heating and cooling is working. Well, they had their cousin come and work it. I'm like, well, does he have if he'll just send me paperwork with his license on it saying it's operational, we'll get it to the insurance company. Yeah, he can't. I'm like, all right, well, now you have to pay us to come back now,
I see that a lot on electrical. Like,
Yes.
everyone thinks they know electrical. And then when it's not done right, I'm sure when you do these re-inspections, you're like, okay, someone clearly doesn't have a license to do this.
Doesn't know the code.
And another
Double
thing,
taps everywhere.
yes. And another thing is that, we get a lot of times, I'm sure you've ran into this, where they're like, oh, all the repairs are done. And we're like, great. And then I'm gonna get my inspector back out. And then it's like,
Corey's like, nothing's done.
Yeah.
like, am I at the right house?
They-
Like,
But they did
cut the
put an
grass.
electrical, yeah.
They did cut the grass.
Yeah, they cut the grass. That's it.
So that's what I like is, hey, I am going to send an inspector back out to re-inspect. So make sure, you get licensed people and it's done right. And you'll tell us, okay, they attempted this, but it didn't work out.
And the good thing, like with having a licensed person do it, is like, let's say there's a small leak somewhere, and let's say it leaks again 2 months later. Well, if you have the documentation from the licensed plumber that did the repair, those people are going to come back out and make it right. If you have the seller's cousin, because we all have a cousin who does it for a handyman, and like he's not coming back, and they're gone, they've closed. So
it's like everybody tarping roofs after Hurricane Michael. It was just like the homeowner and some friends, and they had no idea about how to actually tarp a roof, and it caused a lot more issues.
All right, Corey, what does a typical day look like for you as a home inspector?
So I'm an early riser. So I get up at 5. I have a cup of coffee, and the first thing I do is our itinerary for everyone on our team. So we just send out a list of these are the times and the appointments we're going to be at. I typically leave the house at 7 to get going. I like to get out there and get going. Super's open at 8. So if I leave, I get there. I get 30 minutes to work on the outside before I get in normally. I don't lunch. I've never been a luncher. I feel like if I eat lunch, I'm going to slow down. And so we'll work until normally around 4:30, and then I either am coaching a baseball team or something like that for the kids, and then we'll do some more paperwork that evening when everyone in the house is asleep. So I try to get a lot done in the day.
Busy.
Yeah,
You have
definitely
3
busy.
kids.
I have 3 kids. Yeah,
And you're
I
a
have
coach?
I coach tight ends at Mosley, and I coach
Wow.
a baseball team or 2 baseball teams with the 2 boys, and try to be at everything we can be at. So
My brother and my sister-in-law are both coaches for their children, and it is so competitive. Like more so because I was involved in sports too. And I'm a very competitive person, but I go to these 5 and 6-year-old games, and I'm like so emotionally involved in the game, like raising the roof of the games, and you see people screaming at the umps, and it's serious business. It is very serious. It's more serious than I remember when I was in sports, let me just say. And the uniforms are top notch.
They are. It is. So, look, I used to have hobbies, hunt, fish, golf. I do none of those now. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
like
all.
Thomas.
So my nephew, he's actually a pretty good football player, and he's getting recruited to colleges and all. So I came up before I had kids coaching his crew. So over the last 10, 12 years, I get to kind of see the difference and how it's changed. But now it's all about what you look like and less about how you play.
The uniforms are very impressive. I remember having the baseball pants that came super high, tucked in, and now they have the belts you see in the pros, in the MLB. And these kids are 5 years old.
Yeah.
Look at
And I
this.
don't let my kids have that. I don't do we don't wear arm sleeves and jewelry and that kind of thing. hey, if you want to look different than everyone else,
Yeah.
just play better.
Yeah, just be
But
better.
I'm going to go, I could go off on a youth sports rant that I
Yeah.
will not.
That's amazing. Well, I think too, having the sports background and stuff, what an incredible, like you can be a coach, you're
Yeah.
coaching, you said tight ends?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then now you get to coach your children.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the wildest thing you've seen during a home inspection?
Oh, we were talking about a couple off air that we can't. That you walk in. I think, sometimes it's not uncommon to see like the repairs is a funny thing, car jacks underneath houses, holding them up, those kind of things. But you'd be surprised how many over the years, I bet I found a half a dozen bullet holes or bullets like lodged in roofs where people shot them up. But I think the funniest thing is, not interesting. I was doing a house one time, and when you're walking through the attic, you just kind of know where your foot can hit and can't hit. And my foot hit the top of something, and I knew there shouldn't have been anything there but insulation. And I turned around, and there was a shoebox, and the lid was off, and from one end to the other was $100 bills, right? And I mean, so people have told me it's somewhere between like $25,000 and $50,000 that was in this shoebox. So I'm sitting there, and it clearly wasn't meant to be like. It was getting help from everyone, right? And I'm just looking at it going like, well, what do I do now? I am in this. So I called the realtor. I was like, I want you to know that I found their money. I want you to know there's a ton of it. Like there's no way anyone could accuse me of taking this money if I'm calling everyone I can right now, telling you about all this money sitting in there. Because that is the funny thing about attics is like, that's people's, if you're worried about someone hiding something from you in your home, go check the attic. Like that's where they're going to put it
in
at.
old homes, I bet.
Yes.
In the Cove, I bet you
The
found
Cove
some
homes are
crazy
cool.
stuff.
The Cove homes are cool because they'll have old things will be wrapped in newspapers, and you'll see the old stuff from there. In fact, one interesting thing too was one time I was doing an inspection, and my wife's uncle. I guess at one point in time, his mother had lived in this house. It had been sold many times over. So I get in the attic, and there's boxes and boxes, and one of the lids was open, and I saw a picture of him, and I got to looking, and I was like, this is all of his stuff from when he was a kid. And so we called the people to make sure they were okay us taking it. So we had to give it to him for Christmas. Just all of his old pictures from when he was a kid and everything. It was neat.
We don't even print out pictures anymore.
No.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
know.
And like,
All
in the
digital.
old days, like people used to write love letters to one another,
love that.
pass
Yeah.
a note in class or whatever. I'm sure I wrote a couple of letters to my husband.
And they're probably in an attic somewhere that they're going to get
they're
found.
probably somewhere, but who does that anymore? You just send a text now or,
Yeah, I know, which will be lost forever,
Right.
one day.
Yeah, once you get
You say to a first-time home buyer who feels overwhelmed after getting their inspection report.
So if you guys have probably heard this exact speech that I give, and I give it every time. And I do I'll see sometimes realtors that'll be there with their buyer and like mouth it behind me, but I say this. We do over 3,000 home inspections. I have to try to remember what number we come with now because it moves up. But we do thousands of inspections a year. We literally never find a home with nothing wrong with it. Never.
No, not even new construction.
Not even new. See, you know exactly what it is. Not even new construction. Every home has its issues. And these are a list of these issues. And if I go to your neighbor's home, you're going to find the exact same thing. And so, within a certain realm, obviously. But it's the important thing with a new buyer is them understanding what they need to know and don't need to know. And sometimes what's difficult with a first-time home buyer is the age typically brings the parents in. Yeah, look at the smile, like it's very difficult when the mom and dad come and they, nothing's good enough for their baby they want to be needed and held.
The engineers.
Oh, now
watch
the
out for
engineers are different. So some of my best friends are engineers, and I'll be like, I won't even do a house for you.
They're so meticulous.
It's a whole nother realm.
I remember I had an engineer. It was a dad situation. He's like, look at all these holes in the brick. And I'm like, yeah, those are weep holes.
holes.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know before getting into this business, I will admit.
Yes.
But he was so concerned about all the holes. I go, they're weep holes, sir. He goes, what are weep holes?
I bet I get that question. I've already gotten that question this week about the weep holes. It's that cracked concrete. We tell people there's two kinds of concrete. There's cracked concrete and concrete that's gonna crack. Because people will change their floors out and they'll see the shrinkage cracks, and I'm like, you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what's something most buyers overlook when reading their inspection report? Is it like the deferred cost items or?
Yeah, I would say that's a good one. You know what I mean? They see the things that definitely are concerned with, and then they don't. Because, a water heater will last. If it's on a well, you'll see water heaters 30 years old because they're not exposed to the different chemicals used in the treatment of public water, where, depending on where you're at in other places, water heaters are, 10 to 15-year items. And so just knowing those are coming up. I think a lot of times what they'll not see is like the different types of utilities they have. And so gas is one that people either love gas or hate it. Like we were at one time and they got to closing, saw they had a gas furnace and they're like, we don't want gas, and didn't buy the home. Or another time they bought the house, didn't get the gas turned on, and then didn't know why they had cold water.
Yeah. I've had one or two of those.
Are you seeing these inspections? I mean, obviously, normally you see them, you get requests from realtors during like the due diligence inspection period. But do you ever see a seller wanting to get on, in front of that and getting the inspection done before they even put the house on the market or before they even have a buyer?
Yeah, I think we probably on average, that's probably 10, 12% of our business is people trying to find out. It happens a lot with estate sales. You don't know about the home you don't live in. Because typically when people live in the home, they feel like very comfortable with it there and kind of what they're, even though I'm going to find things they're unaware of, they feel like they have. But if it's an estate sale, you see that a lot. That's the main time. Because also too, like if you have not to cut myself out of business, but like let's say you own a home and you hire me to do the inspection and you provide that inspection to the buyer, then that buyer may be the same way where they're like, well, that's their guy, and so it is a little bit difficult, to navigate there.
A homeowner could say you find 10 things wrong with the house, maybe not like major things, but the seller goes and fixes everything. They're still going to get their home inspector or, and they're still going to want to feel like and especially this market, they want to feel like they've got something out of it.
Validate the fee is what they want to do.
Yeah. So I don't typically do that. I just wait till it comes and then we deal with it. What about you, Heather?
Yeah, well, it depends on the house, I think. So like an older home, like one you're looking at, I called you about the other day, a pre-home inspection was provided, but some of the information on that home inspection was not, and this is aside from what we talked about, some of the hurricane clips that they had put on the pre-home inspection were not actually in the attic because they couldn't get in the attic. The hurricane clips were from the outside front porch. And so they were getting a credit. And I know that you can have them on the outside, but they weren't all the way around the house. It was just the porch. So I think it just depends on the house. I think that extra inspection after the fact is important because you kind of want to make sure that everything's on the up and up. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to have that pre-inspection.
That's a great point. I think the age of the house has a big role.
Okay, what are some red flags in older homes that buyers really need to take seriously?
I think there is a little bit of because like we have to be careful never to like insult anyone, and the myth of like, well, they don't make them like this anymore. Like, yeah, they don't make them like that anymore because there's a better way to do it. There's people that have a greater education than me, and they've come up with these building guidelines, and it's gotten better, and they go, well, it made it through this hurricane. Okay, but that's not like, there's so many other factors to that. It's so funny. For years, people would ask prior to Michael, like, what can we do to help, in the case of a hurricane? And I would always tell people, like, evacuate. Like, that's like, this is a house, you know what I mean? There is no such thing as a perfect, but really, like, in theory, what we should have said was cut all the trees in your neighborhood. Right. Like, we wouldn't have known, right? Yeah. And so, but with older homes, I mean, galvanized piping, wiring, tend to be the issues. And then the insurance cost is typically a little bit greater because, like what you said with the clips, the way they were built just don't meet the modern, standards. Now, do they have wood that's a lot thicker than we used? Yes, they do. There are some, obviously, I have a couple like rentals that are older homes and lived in older homes. Yeah, they're great, but they're different, and especially like, in the Cove where it's such a desirable area. That over they were all originally 700 square feet. So everybody's added on and they all use that cousin that we talked about to add on. And so that's where it kind of makes it tricky, where everything seems together.
Can you explain the difference between a major and minor findings and how buyers should interpret them? And I know you just touched on it a little bit, but are you writing up cosmetic stuff on your inspection reports? Like, hey, this paint is chipped here.
No. So you'll get from us, you'll get a summary page, a full report, and then a couple other forms. But based on the things you really need for the buying process or the issue process, it'd be those two. The full report, we're going to try to list things in there like, ceiling fan is slightly unbalanced, stained carpet, but they're not going to go in the items that are actual issues. So we've given you that information. You're aware that day it was that way. Because honestly, some of that too is this, I don't want you to, like, like we talked about with the guy with the tub faucet, you never know what they really care about and what they don't.
Right.
You know, it's sometimes, like a lot of times, people will come to a house and I'm like, they're gonna hate this place, and they're like, this is fantastic after we tell them, you know, or I'm like, this home is great, and they're like, I can't live here, and I'm like, I don't know, and then I have to go like,
The reality,
okay, yeah.
quality control after that. And
It's
it's
just
like, what happened?
It's so, yeah, and then I have to like get in the car, like, look, I want you to know right now that the dad was there and he said this place isn't good enough for his baby.
I've had
you
one
know?
of those. It was awful.
Yes. To me, it's more just like, it's how everyone gets that information. Like, and how are you giving, like, I don't allow sellers to be in the room with us while we do this. And it makes
when you're going over.
Yes, we all know. And like the realtor could go, it's fine. The buyer can go, it's fine. And I'll go, I understand that. If when we walk away, you want to go tell them everything I said, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I've been around long enough to know that this isn't true. Right. And who they're going to hate is me, and who you're going to be afraid to ask me the questions you want to ask because they're there. Yeah. They're going to be insulted because they've done all this work and they don't really believe that they could ever have rot in their window trim because they didn't know it was there. So there's no way I can know that it's there, you know? And so now we're all kind of covering each other. And I just found like to me, that's one thing that at one point I was like, just no more. We're just never going to have them, you know, in there. Because I'm sure you guys run into it all the time. Like, you don't want buyers talking to sellers. It's just not good for what we're doing. That's why they don't
have them around the closing table anymore all at the same time.
Deals will be destroyed if you make one insulting comment and they hear you. So you just, but yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think of that, you know, because some of these sellers, especially after Michael, they have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Paying contractors or whatever. So the last thing they want to hear is there's something else wrong with the house after they've forked out all this money.
Exactly.
And so it becomes like an emotional thing for them. So,
and especially with like, so like we, you know, there was a huge shingle issue with defective shingles, with TAMCO shingles. And unfortunately, it came out 2017, 2018, which means the biggest amount in the whole country are in Panama City, Florida, you know, because we all got roofs. So you'll go to a house and you'll tell them like, well, your shingles are defective, you know, and they're like, well, no, they're not. I'm like, they are, you know, but like that's to them, like we got a new roof and, you know, our roof was fine before that. And it's like, I understand, but they are, and you need to make this phone call and that phone call.
And luckily, TAMCO has been pretty good about replacing those. You just file a claim, and you got to go through the whole process, which is, you know, a nuisance. But if you get a brand new roof and you sell your home, then it's worth it. And typically, I mean, don't they cover the cost? Yeah, they've been. Yeah.
There's never been a company that I've seen that's done what they've done as far, because there was an issue with defective shingles on a bunch of homes. In a subdivision off a transmitter, they had them, and they're called Atlas Chalet shingles, and it was prior to the storm. So like that company got lucky because they were having defects, but people didn't know, and then they all got ripped off. So they were still having to like deal with other defects in other parts of the country, but in ours, everyone got, you know, new shingles at the time. But yeah, TAMCO, I keep wondering when it's going to be. They come back. Someone tells me that we didn't get a new roof out of it. It's like we did one on Tuesday in off 390, and I said, listen, they've been great. I literally had that phone call with them as we waited outside the studio.
So what exactly is the defect? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and so when the shingle went on, it looked completely normal, right? And what will happen, so granules are like the pieces of asphalt that sit on top. And then you have like a substrate, which is like, let's say the paper, and then you glued on the granules, let's say. Well, the granules will just rapidly come off, and they'll come off in certain angles. Like you can see, like there'll be these lines, you know, so half the shingle looks great, the other half looks bad. And what's funny is based on different colors, they look different. And so you can, you can see them in different ways that way too. What really stinks is some people had them put on like 2017, and then they're kind of stuck because TAMCO's like, well, this shingle's been through a hurricane now. We can't, have that. But like the gutters will just be completely filled, and then you'll get on them and walk. It'll look like a 20-year-old roof.
Even though it's a year old.
Yeah, a couple of years old, yeah.
Wow.
Well, there were some actually in Breakfast Point in 2012, 2013 in that area too that had them. And that company did a good job of going in, and they pulled them. And those look different. So those look like quarters. All of them look like hail had hit it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So this next question we kind of already talked about not having a buyer and seller in the same room. But with doing the inspection, do you like for the buyer to be there for the entire inspection, or do you recommend them coming towards the end so you can kind of review all the findings?
Yeah, and so that's another thing now, kind of like sellers, like while we're doing the work, we don't have you there, right? We will get so we'd love for you to come at the end. The last 20, 30 minutes, you can measure, you can walk around, we can do all those things. So for a variety of reasons. One time I had to pay for someone's carpet to get steam cleaned because someone brought their kid and they put their grape juice on it, once we started using thermal imaging, like if someone's leaning up against a wall, well, now I'm trying to figure out why there's a hot spot on that wall because I didn't know you were there. A lot of things, it's just a lot, but they're like, oh, we won't distract you. I'm like, but your presence is, because you'll have a question and I may not have gotten to that point yet. Or, a lot of times it'll be like Steve and myself doing an inspection. So we're each hitting different parts of that home and then we're going to come together at the end to put all that information together. And then I'll have, so if we can just have you come, when I feel like I got a good bearing on the home, have you come in and go over there. And I think it's just better for everyone too.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants you watching over, your shoulder while you're working.
Exactly.
I mean, if we're putting a listing presentation together or we're running comps or whatever we're doing, do we want someone right
you
here?
You have to have focus. And I think it's human nature when you're in the same room as someone to try and fill the dead air with talking.
For sure.
And so that's really distracting.
And, obviously you're at these homes for several hours, but you are very efficient at what you do. I mean, my husband and I, we have this conversation all the time. He's been roofing since he was 5 years old. Now he got his license. He got his license. He was probably 19, 20, but he's very efficient at what he does. So what one roofer, it might take a whole day, 6 hours, Thomas can knock it out in an hour.
Yeah.
And so he has so many scenarios where he's on a roof doing his thing and the owner's out there looking at him and then oh, you were only up there an hour. Yeah, because I have over 20 years of experience and this is what I do and I'm good at what I do.
Yeah, that's the saying. You didn't pay me for the hour, you paid me for the 20 years it's going to learn how to do it.
And I think if you just have someone over your shoulder constantly, so that is kind of a battle that I have to constantly have is, hey, I know you're very analytical and you want to be a part of this whole process, but I don't think, the inspector wants you to be necessarily there for 3 hours while they're, meet them at the end. A lot of times they just trust your report. Hey, send me the report. If I have any issues, I'll call, Cory or whoever it is. But I think at the end you do a really good job too, taking that time and going through each, item.
Yeah. So we had 5 inspections today and buyer came to the first one. I'm about to meet someone after this, and then 3 others no one comes to, and so, I mean, it's kind of it's one of those things where
Part of the job.
Yeah, and I try to tell people too, I'm for me to give you the best quality, I need you to give me some time to get in front of you.
Same with photographers, and they don't,
I mean, you know what? I think any profession at this point, if you want us to do our job, give us a moment to do it, and then we'll review it.
And I try to think about that now. If I have someone come do work at the house, I'm like, go do your thing. I won't, call me if you need me. I won't be around.
What does it mean when you recommend a further evaluation by a specialist? When should buyers push for those?
Yeah, and so it's not tricky, but it's so, if it's a roofing issue, and it's a nail that's popped, well, we need to have a handyman can do that, right? But it's kind of up to me of going look, I believe there could be other issues. I believe there's enough things here. Because in an ideal world, every time there was a GFCI outlet that didn't work, you would pay an electrician to do it, right? But I also know that that's not going to happen as much either, right? So whenever you see those issues kind of compounded, and also too, we'll try to put on there as well, let's say we give you a list of our electrical issues, we'll always add, have the electrician evaluate and repair, because this is his world. I have a certain amount of knowledge about each item, but they are specialists. They know every little thing about it. So if we see that there could be an issue there, let's have, it's kind of we're in doctors, where they go and they'd have you go see the pediatrician or the podiatrist or the oncologist. It's just different, for every situation. That's not a great answer for you, but.
No, it's a perfect answer. I mean, if there's a structural issue, you want them to see a contractor who has that licensing that can say there truly is an issue that needs to be addressed, and the cost. That's helpful too, because you guys can't give costs out on home inspections.
And everybody's like, oh, just give me a ballpark. I'm like, I don't do that. You know, like I don't know what labor costs. I don't know what the part costs. Like I can tell you who does it, and I can tell you what's wrong with it, but I'm just bad. And I'm kind of cheap too. So like in my mind, what something's worth, it may cost a lot more. You know?
I feel like the costs have definitely gone up a little bit for
sure, especially for material. Well, everything has.
Yeah, everything.
The actual work too.
How many, Cory, this question just popped into my head. How many home inspectors are there here locally that you're competing with for business? Because I feel like I've done open houses, not a huge fan of open houses, but I get a lot of home inspectors that come in, please use me, Like, I feel like there's a lot of more trying to get into the business now.
Yeah,
Do you feel
are.
that?
Yeah, I bet if you looked at the licensing, there's probably 35, 40 maybe. It's a large number. But I know the percentage of homes I know the number of homes that sell every year, right? I know the number that we do. So I feel like market-wise, like there's probably only a handful of us that are there's probably 10 of us that do the vast majority of them. A lot of them are like, I'm a fireman that has this on the side, or I'm retired, so I do this. And I mean, more power to them, but like this isn't, like we're not retired and this isn't a side job.
I feel like you're working 12 hours a day some days, maybe more.
I'd kill for a 12-hour day.
Yeah. That'd be a vacation.
Yeah,
It's kind of like realtors though, like 49% of realtors have sold one home.
Yes.
Only. So
Yeah.
you're in the top 50% if you sold 2 homes.
Well, where I think I've been really blessed at is that, like, so I used to go do the whole open house thing too. And like, I mean, there was a time, like if I saw a realtor getting gas, I'd pull in and fill up so we could talk, right? But I also found too what you're much better to do is get the really good ones. Like, because if I get a phone call from you guys, it's professional, it's done right, I get paid, we're not wasting time, like we all have things to do. When you get the one that's not, then it's, hey, you just hold, like the way you have to hold. I know when you guys do deals with realtors that aren't professionals per se, or say full-time, I should say, you end up doing both sides of the deal, and it's the same kind of in our situation. It's like, well, now I'm holding buyer's hand and realtor's hand, and the repairman's on the phone with me, and I have to tell the repairman, like, if you don't know how to do it, then you're not the guy to do it. Well, I know you're the real, so it just...
Time is,
It's better to have the right people, and like, luckily over time that I've got to get where I have good relationships with the ones that I feel like do the largest amount of work, and we can all... stay kind of in that lane.
Yeah.
I feel like when I first started out, I would kill for anything. But now it gets to the point where you only have so many hours in a day. You have to be more selective.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of part-time realtors that do, and more power to them. Like hustle, have side jobs, do it. But when we do it full time, at like 7, I like to cut it off.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously in real estate, that does not happen.
Right.
Because, Thomas and I will try to watch something, and my phone's going off and they're like, what are they doing contacting you at 10 o'clock at night? Well, they worked their first job. Now this is their second job. They, just got off and now they're trying to schedule inspections and, it's just, there is a lot of part-time.
Or this closing isn't going to decide where they vacation this year. So they're going to handle it in a certain way. That is what's tough with the part-time ones is they'll be like, hey, that's the worst phone call or the text. Hey, I need this one to close. I'm like, well, I don't know what you're asking me to do. I know what you're asking me to do there, right? But like, it's just...
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And so look, sometimes it's just like, hey, this buyer is tough, but like, it's different when they say like, it's tricky.
It's definitely tricky.
Yeah. I respect your professionalism, Cory, honestly. I had one talking about buyers' dads where
please
it still makes me shake to like this. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. It was on the second house that he was going to buy, and the buyer's dad flies in from Texas and wants to be there and tells him that we had a previous appraisal too verifying the square footage. That's what's crazy. He wanted to go in and measure the inside square footage, and I kept explaining to him the square footage that's measured, that the appraiser measures, is usually from the outside of the house because it's everything from the outside in. in. That's the square footage. So it's going to be different from the actual airspace. And you were there toward it was the end of the inspection. We were in there doing measurements.
Corey's like, I do so many, I don't remember.
But I know.
I think I do though.
Yeah. So we measure the square footage, right? And report
it's
back.
200 square foot less or 150.
Actually, very close.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, especially with Brick. Brick will add.
My buyer wants to cancel. That's not my decision. That's his decision. He's within his due diligence period. I try to educate him and encourage him, but it still happens. What can you do? Corey gets a phone call from the listing agent, and I'm like, Corey has nothing to do with this. I don't understand why you're calling him.
It's almost like a Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, it's so wild sometimes. Yeah. But Corey, so professional, and he's like, Heather, and I was like, it's fine. I'm sorry.
Well, I can imagine kind of the phone calls that you get. I'm sure you get parents or people cussing you out. I mean, does that happen?
It does. Honestly, though, sometimes, here's what I try to think about. Y'all are doing I don't want to go talk and carry people around and look at houses and go, I enjoy the silence of doing a home, right? So sometimes it's okay. If there's got to be a bad guy, let it be me. You know what I mean? And what I say that is if you're mad at someone about this or that, I know, it's fine. It's fine because you had a short situation with me, and then they can go back to Casey and Heather and go, well, that guy, I normally come from another realtor, you know what I mean? But it's fine. Sometimes you have to be that, and you just kind of take it. I try to take it as much as I can because it's fine. I just feel like in all deals there ends up being someone there, like with sellers. Let's say I have to tell the seller, I get this question all the time. Hey, what you finding? How's it look? Hey, is it gonna fall down? And home looks great. And I just try to keep doing that until I can get out, and then they'll corner you. So what all did you find? Yeah. And I have to go, well, look, I work for the buyer, and I'm sure, that it's some way you'll learn this information, but part of us working for them is we're going to supply it for them first. Well, it's my house.
But
yes,
they're
sir.
Not paying for it. You're working for somebody
but then he's mad. So now he's going to be mad. So he can either be mad at the buyer, the realtor, or me. He might as well be mad at me. Well, yes, sir, I understand, but this is just us as a company. This is as a protocol, how we do things. And I appreciate your time today. And just kind of got to wear it.
Yeah.
Which is not my personality in any other thing.
Yeah, but the customer service is
on point.
Even if hey, I'll be the bad guy, whatever. And I'm sure people challenge your findings too. Because one question I was going to have is, I know you said 30, 40 inspectors here. I feel like not all of them know what they're talking about.
Yes.
I think that's any industry.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
because do you ever get someone say, well, I have built homes before and you're wrong?
Yes. Oh, I get that. I built. Apparently, everyone was a contractor at one point because everyone at the house tells me that they've built homes before. You know what I mean? And they're like, no. And it's.
But you've done so many. I feel like you have 4 or 5 explanations. You're like, okay, checkmate.
And you have to just be like, I'm just gonna show you here where it's not that way. But getting it from the sellers, I think on Google we have 5 or 7 bad reviews over the last 20 years. The 2 that stick in my mind are from sellers. One that was mad that I didn't give him the information, and the other one, oh God, this is a crazy story. Listen, this guy shows up. He's a seller, and he is brutal to me. And he's mad because we got there 30 minutes early. And I was like, well, look, we gave a window, and we knocked on the renters to make sure it was okay. We told him, if you don't want us to come in, that's fine. We just let you know we're here early. And he's going off, right? Well, then it gets it's a phone call and it's bad. Whatever, you shake it off. So I'm a couple months later, and you get the Google review pop up, and it is just brutal. And I'm like, this is from the seller, right? So I'm gonna go and challenge it. So I call the listing agent, and they were like, well, look, before you do that, just let me give you a little information. This guy's a convicted murderer. Okay. Oh, so I go and do the background information on this guy at that point, and he had been convicted of killing his girlfriend, right? And then there was a law made because of him, because he was suing her family from jail. He was just a guy that wanted to go after everyone, right? So fast forward a year later, I get a call from another realtor who had a review like this, and they're like, hey, I see that you've dealt with it, so I have to share the story. And then a good friend of ours that owns a company, I'll tell you this later, he called me with the same thing.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, and I go, look, I don't think I would fight it. I would do exactly what I did and wear it, because I don't want to deal with a crazy person, and this guy
No.
obviously has more time, and
Yeah.
he's spent a lifetime doing it. But it's like, so you never know on a Google review who is the murderer that says that you run a bad business.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people do look at those reviews, and it will affect your business. So
Yeah, it's tough.
I for sure want to challenge it. Now, if it's someone that's murdered somebody, maybe just like let that one slide. And
Yes, because I was ready to go to war, and I was like,
do as
oh
many
no.
as you do,
Way to go.
when you do as many as you do, I mean, you're bound to, you can't make everybody happy. I feel like you are in a very unique situation because someone's going to be upset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Buyer's going to be like, thank you for finding it. Seller's like, you're wrong, and we're going to get a second opinion.
Yeah.
But Thomas, he had, because mostly 5-star reviews, but he had one that wasn't good. He actually called up the guy and changed his mind.
The septic guy?
Yeah, it was a guy on 30A, and it wasn't a roof thing, it was a condensation thing.
Yeah.
So I said, honey, just very, calmly explain to him step by step what you did, and I think you just charged him like a service call because it was all the way over there. But it was just a condensate. You know how they do it
especially
out there.
at 38 with all vaulted.
That's a common issue out there. And he
Very
got him to change it.
Sometimes that's all it takes. It's just a little understanding.
And the older guy, he didn't know how to change it. So he's like, I'm going to put my wife on the phone so she can walk you through how to change it. And he gave us a 5-star.
That's
Well,
awesome.
I think that's what's tough too.
You have to try to challenge it, it's his business.
It is. And with the review thing too, it's like, you look at the numbers and the percentages, but I also know maybe I should carry a tablet and have you review it. It's like when they give you the tip and they're standing in front of you, what will you tip?
Yeah.
That's what they're doing at the inspection is,
smoothie, you're like,
they're putting the review tab in front of you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we have a good steady amount of business. I like the people I work with. And if we make a mistake, we'll try to make it right.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I had a seller who refused to let you into a home to inspect it for the buyer. And I called, and when he told me this story, I was like, first of all, I know that's not Cory. Like, I've worked with Cory so much. I already know, like, it's great to have that reputation when immediately I know it's not you. But I figured out after that whole thing that it was that other company. And so what it was is another home inspector had chased a seller out of their own new construction build with a hammer. And and I was like, I already know that's not Cory.
Even on Cory's worst day.
Yeah,
So it was so funny. Heather. I was going through all my files trying to find this person. I was like frantic. I was like, I have never talked to this person ever.
I know.
But that's another thing too, where it's like, in that situation, you can be the bad guy, or you I could go and fight it and make a big deal, or go just use someone else for this.
Yeah.
Like our good friend Angie, we had this problem one time at a home in Margaritaville, and
I know this story.
and it was just like
They wouldn't let you on the roof.
They wouldn't let. We weren't on the roof. We were on the ladder there, and the guy was late to show up. The super there, and he was clearly going to make a point. I was like, listen, we know your protocols. We do all these. We haven't done because that in that area. I mean, y'all have had one there too. Like there's a way they let you do it, and it does really restrict home inspectors, right? And we had put the ladder up against the wall. That's what we put the ladder up there, and we had not flagged the ladder. He wanted it flagged for OSHA. And like at that point, I just rolled my eyes like, are you serious right now? So he goes and he calls them. He's like, put him on the no use list for whatever time. I mean, I got it turned over at the time. Yeah.
I mean, and because you were finding things.
Yes.
You did some out there for me, and you found, and they were fighting me tooth and nail over
like
it.
the insulation. We find that all the time. Like there's a certain way it says, and then you show them the
I
code.
think you found too many things, and they were like, we got to get this guy
I think
out
that,
here.
by the way, I do think that was it, because I do know this. We do so many end of the year inspections right now at Margaritaville. It's unbelievable. We have one tomorrow morning. It's my first appointment. Like we have so many, because they all talk to each other out there. That community is very social, and so they'll let you know. But so I had to tell Angie, I go, well, this is what happened. I go, but for your buyer now feels like that guy, they're uncomfortable. I go, we just get someone else. You know what I mean? For this, like we don't want. We'll be the bad guy today, and then I'll deal with those people on another level.
Yeah. Pick your battles.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
So what exactly is a 4-point inspection and a wind mitigation inspection, and are they usually included in a standard home inspection?
So for us, we include them. I know there are other companies because I just know from when we quote out deals, they'll say this is the price, and then they'll tack on additionally for them. So they're included in our full inspection. Now we do, Winston from our team, he mainly does the insurance part. So we have a lot of great insurance agents that we work for around town, and he does a lot of those each day. But so a 4-point inspection, it used to just be for older homes, 25 or older. Now it's almost every home they want it on. But it's the heating and cooling, electric, plumbing, and roof. Now it's not a full evaluation. You're basically documenting what kind of equipment they have for the insurance company. And it's a pass-fail, and that like if you have a Federal Pacific electrical panel, a Challenger panel, a roof that's less than 5 years life expectancy, a water heater older than a certain age, wiring that's aluminum, those kind of things, it cuts off who you can be insured by. Where the wind mitigation, basically when the hurricanes came through in the early 2000s, they were trying to find a way to kind of insurance agents to know how each home would react to predict in a storm. So they came up with this form, and long story short, it basically just can deduct from your insurance rate. It can help you, so you have clips, you have a decking attachment that's good, your roof was built to code, your home was built to a newer code, the geometry of the roof, if you have shutters, those kind of things, and that can bring your insurance rate down. So 4-point basically lets you know who can insure you, and then wind mitigation helps you with the rate.
Now, when you're looking at the roofs in particular, and you're trying to see, okay, if this is a 2021 roof or whatever, are you looking to see if those permits are closed out? And are you notating that if they're not?
For the wind mitigation, they just want the date the permit was pulled.
What about on the 4-point?
4-point, they just want it pulled.
I had one the other day. I had a listing. It's on the beach. And another inspector called and said, hey, I can't find the permit for this one. And normally that's like one thing I do before I list a property to make sure. So I knew it. I was like, okay. Anyways, I ended up finding it just on Bay County Property Appraisers, and then I called to confirm it was closed out. But he was refusing to give us the 4-point because he was going to write on there unpermitted roof. And I was like, before you write that, let me just find it for you. But it was a little bit more complicated because it was a bunch of condos, so they each had different buildings. So it's just a matter of locating it.
It is very difficult. Like we were out at Gulf Highlands the other day, and it's like, so we check with Panama City Beach. We check with the appraiser site, and so because some people don't know, like the beach, some part of it is county and some part of it is the beach. So we went through the beach, we did everything, and there was no permit. Well, then to come find out, someone had filed it with the county 15 years before. So it's like, it had switched what part of, then it gets tricky in finding them. And it would be nice if we had a much more central way to look for permits. In Panama City, it's so tough. You either call on this number, or in Lynn Haven, now they want you to email. You used to be able to call the county. You have a portal. Panama City Beach does have a website that works, but you don't always know that which one will be where. Or is it 171 West Leslie or 171 Leslie? Or like in this particular situation, it didn't file because they put the wrong zip code. So everything was the same, but they put 32404 instead of 32407, and they got filed with the county.
Interesting. What is the biggest home maintenance issue you see that could have been avoided? If you could give every homeowner one piece of advice for maintaining their home, what would it be?
Could be avoided. So prior to 2018, it was debris on your roof. You know what I mean? Like, it would just sit there. All the pine straw would sit on the roof and become issues, or you'd get the issue that way. I would say nowadays, maybe more like your heating and cooling system, keeping it serviced. Maintenance is pretty easy. You clean out the condensation drains, those kind of things, cleaning the debris from the evaporator coil, checking the filters. I think now we see it more of an issue is that the more that we do air quality tests, you come back and see the homes that have lower rated filter systems tend to have bigger problems, And so I think in our environment with the high levels of humidity, and it constantly being an issue in a home, your heating and cooling system is a big deal.
Well, any other questions?
No.
Well, that was a lot of fun, Cory. I felt like we learned a lot. We hope you can come back on. Where can people reach you if they want? Are they interested in your services?
Yeah, and so we have, obviously a quick Google search for 5-star inspections will do it. Phone number is 850-819-3388. We have the websites. I mean, we're kind of like anything else, I guess, pretty easy to find presence-wise these
And Cory's
days.
really responsive, even if you're in the middle of a home inspection.
Yes.
You will text back. I mean, it might not be right away, but I feel like the customer service is top notch.
Yeah, I try to, my thing, I hate starting a day like a business, like the business hours without every message, email, or text returned or phone call. So if I can do that, it lets me know when I leave the house that I feel, that's mainly what I spend the morning doing every day, is trying to make sure everyone's called up, and then, getting the ones, that you can on time too. But I appreciate you guys having me on. I've known y'all for many years. You guys are fantastic. I love what you're doing here. It's a great show. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks,
We hope you
Cory.
come back.
Oh, absolutely.